we're happy to have with us. First of all, let me just say Lewis Webb has been a tremendous help to all of us, as have a number of people from the American Friends Service Committee. You'll notice AFSC, American Friends Service Committee, populates the biographies of many of our presenters. And Lewis hails from the New York office of the American Friends Service Committee. Lucy Duncan, a major help in all of the work that we've done. Scylla Warhoftig, formerly of AFSC. Number of AFSC presenters that will be with us. So I think please give a round of applause to the American Friends Service Committee for their support that they have given this conference. Some of you reminded me that although I told you about the Quaker Mass Network to End Mass Incarceration, I neglected to tell you what to do with the sheets once you filled them out. See, that's why it takes a community to raise a conference. I've left the box top out on one of the tables out here in the foyer. If you want to, and I put a box in there, one in there as an example that's not filled in, but you can put your filled in ones in there if you would, please. Lewis is going to be talking to us this afternoon about one of the more significant elements, and I think one of those places which I think he'll get into in his talk where we have a significant leverage, and that is with the school system, where we can start with programs like AVP and restorative justice programs to create situations where there are alternatives to solving problems violently, and perhaps ending the zero tolerance, no broken windows kinds of mentality that catches up so many people in the school to prison pipeline, which Lewis is going to lead us in an interactive discussion, and then we'll move into our panel about living in a police state. Lewis, please give him a round of applause. Thank you so much, Lewis, for being with us.
Did it work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't see the light. I'm sorry.
You've got the internal light.
James, I'm going to need your help if you don't mind. Okay. It's really not that challenging, okay? That's why I picked you.
You want me?
And not true, okay? Just flip for me.
Oh, sure.
I think it's just one button, so we're good?
You bet.
All right.
One of these?
Yes.
It's sinking in.
It's working, right? Okay.
You do all the time.
Yeah. All right, before I get started, first of all, thank you. I know that it's been a long day of the first day, and your willingness to spend some time with me here is appreciated, so thank you. Okay. And as John hinted, I believe, you're going to have to do a little more work than you've been used to so far today. All right? And that's not because I'm lazy, but because you're here to move. Right? We can listen and listen and listen, but until we start getting engaged, then the problem stays. So I'm going to need you to engage with me as we talk about this. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right, I appreciate it. All right. It was about, I guess mid-October, and I had recently started working for the American Friends Service Committee. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and my wife gave me a call at the office, and she said to me, "You need to talk to Sean before I get home." Now, when my wife says that, she's not a Quaker, so I know that means Sean's in trouble, and that trouble could be pretty serious if I don't intervene very quickly. All right, so I say, "What happened?" And she said, "Sean's science teacher called, and Sean has not been in science all week." And Sean is a 16-year-old junior in high school. Those of us who remember the process of going to college, that junior year is real important, right? So she's livid and I'm in trouble because I have to fix it, right? So I say, okay, relax, we'll figure out what's going on. And in my head I'm saying, okay, I've got to get to Sean before she does. and I've got to make sure that he knows the importance of showing up to school. So I call Sean, and he doesn't answer the phone, right? So I'm out of luck. Sean's going to see Mom before Sean hears from me, right? So I get home late that evening, and Sean and Mom had already talked. And when I walked in the door, my wife said to me, "We have a problem." And I said, "What's going on?" She said, "Sean has missed, as I told you, the last 4 periods of science. Science was his first period class each morning. And, it just doesn't make sense." So I say, "Well, I leave about 7:30. Sean has already left. His school is not that far away. His classes start at 8:15. Why isn't he showing up?" So I go to Sean. I said, "Excuse me, what the hell is going on here, right?" And Sean says, "It's not me." I said, "What do you mean it's not you? Where are you going? What are you doing?" And he says, "Well, they just installed metal detectors at my school. And they were supposed to put 2 in, but they so far have only put 1. Which means that we all have to line up outside of the building because no one can get in until they successfully pass through the metal detector. And that's why I'm missing science. I stand outside for 45 minutes waiting to get through the metal detector." We have parents in the room? Can you imagine how I felt? What do you think it was?
Rage.
Yeah. That's exactly what I felt. But at whom? No. I felt rage at myself. Because immediately I said to myself, why aren't you positioned to put Sean in a place where he wouldn't have to experience that? And that's where the rage lied. So I immediately said to my wife, "I need you to go to the school tomorrow and address it. And I have something to do when I get to work tomorrow." And what it was to resign. Okay. To resign. Okay. Because although I loved working, or at least I thought I was still relatively new, I had fallen in love with working for the AFSC. But I knew that if I had gone elsewhere, I could make more money. Okay. So I quickly decided that was my responsibility as a parent, to have the resources to take Sean and his 2 younger brothers out of the environment that subjects them to that, and to, offer them the options that they deserve. So I'm walking to the building after I get out of the train, and I'm in my head writing my letter of resignation. And I don't know if anyone's been to the New York City office. Okay, we actually share a building with Friends Seminary. You all know Friends Seminary? Okay. So there are 2 streets I can go down in order to get inside my office. And for some reason, I walked down 16th Street instead of 15th that day. And I just happened to get to the office just as the students of Friends Seminary were coming in for classes. And Friends Seminary runs from K through 12, so there were older kids going into the school. And I stopped. And what I saw was the most frustrating and honestly angering thing I've ever seen as a parent. The principal, or the headmaster, I guess is what he calls himself, was greeting the students with a smile and a handshake. And immediately in my head, I juxtaposed that to what Sean just described as the way his school experience started. And that is where I realized that, Louis, this letter of resignation is selfish. This is about you and Sean and your other 2 sons if you resign. If you stay and you engage yourself and others in the work, then you're doing what? You're changing a system not just for Sean, but for 1.1 million other people, young people in New York City who go to public school. Now, I had not really heard of this phrase. This was a phrase that came from the New York Civil Liberties Union, I think, coined this phrase. And so, I started looking at metal detectors in school, and it sent me to all these websites about all of these injustices that our children are experiencing as they try to form their lives. And so part of my work now is committed to this very particular path to incarceration, which is called the school to prison pipeline, button number 1. All right. Very often when we talk to groups, we assume that they know what we're talking about. I'm not going to make that assumption. So I'm going to ask you, you've heard the phrase, what comes to mind? And I've been a teacher a number of times, and I've learned that you don't wait for hands, so what comes to mind? So if you see me walking near you, yeah, do whatever you think you can to avoid me bothering you. School to prison pipeline, word association, what comes up?
A system that's designed for kids that fall through the cracks, to be geared toward going to prison.
Seems like she was planted, right? That was very well said. Do you want to enhance it at all?
That sounded pretty.
That does
perfect.
sound right, yeah.
Yeah. Fall through the cracks, key phrase, because that could mean a lot of things. But I would think drugs would be in there,
Okay.
definitely, to get our kids on drugs and then
Oh,
get them into prison.
okay.
Well, it's the sharing of discipline records and suspension rates and who's on suspension and number of suspensions, and out you go, you have to figure out your own way.
Is it Paula?
Yeah.
Okay.
The zero tolerance policy
Mm-hmm.
that are, and the business of calling in the police with matters that used to be resolved by the principal and teachers
Yeah.
are how, part of what is occurring
Yeah.
that causes this.
It's special education, which they designed to make sure there were certain kids who would not get an education, and so they said so many, not just special education, but there's so many black young children. We can design so many prisons to house them. So they designed the system so that the pipeline
Yeah,
came to
yeah.
jail.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I got a call on Keith. Yes, sir. Go for it.
I think where you have two schools in a school, there's two different paths, two different tracks.
Yeah, okay. All right, last one. Normally I have to pull information. You guys are great. Thank you. Go.
Over this prescription of Whitland for
Yeah, which is part of that school in a school system. You have the special ed who need to be medicated because they're uncontrollable and all of that good stuff. And I appreciate all that I've heard, and I think if I were to tease something out of all of it, I would ask you to acknowledge it's a plan. And the plan is sort of what you just said. There is a plan to make sure that a certain number of people end up in our prisons.
A conscious plan?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes, all right?
That's why I need documentation.
Oh, yeah. You say no? All right, who wants to defend me? Yes. You don't believe it either?
No, I don't believe it, because
Okay.
for reasons that had nothing to do with school, I happened to be attending a church service, a black church,
Mm-hmm.
and the minister stood up and said, when they are planning prison
Construction, yeah.
for, 15 years from now, they come and look at our second graders.
That's exactly what they do. Yeah. Go ahead.
From years of being inside schools, I would think, no, it's not an intentional plan, but there is an expectation from teachers once a child starts having small problems, either at home or behaviorally at school, then the teacher starts looking at them very differently. And I can remember sitting in the teacher's room and hearing second grade teachers saying, oh, I know that in
You're
5
going to,
years,
yeah.
one of my students is going to be the one stealing my purse.
Okay.
rebuttal?
All right. Go ahead, please. Thank you. Although there are a number of drivers behind the school to prison pipeline, that doesn't work. I've become convinced that two of them are the most impactful, and that is racism and dollars. Okay. The fact that, and I don't know if you can see this chart very well, this is the California public school system. In 2011, the total arrest of 18 and under young people is broken down by race, and without even having to look at the legend on the bottom. What's the red? Yeah. Coincidental? Not by a long shot, huh? Okay. Why? Are my kids really that bad?
No.
Is it genetic that black young men just do this stuff? I'm hearing no, but are we sure?
Yes.
Are you sure? I mean, it would be a quick answer, wouldn't it? That it just makes sense. They're the ones that are doing it. They're the ones that we got to lock up. I mean, why not just accept that as the reasoning behind all of this? Yes. You okay?
My thinking on
Oh,
this
okay.
is that originally black people were imported into this country to work, and very quickly it became evident that there was a problem of controlling.
Okay.
So that issues of control are very big, and by the second grade, behavior problems start to become more evident than they did in kindergarten.
Or redefined as bad.
And if a white kid does it, boys will be boys. If a black kid does it, maybe even without realizing it, the teachers are thinking control.
Okay, I appreciate that. But it's not because we're just bad people, right?
No.
Okay. I don't want to leave here with anyone assuming that. All right. What about my second driver? Am I right on that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You're convinced?
You're probably going to tell the story, but
Go.
just the notion, I was so shocked when I realized that our for-profit prison system in Pennsylvania, the state has guaranteed those for-profit prisons that they will fill every bed.
Right.
That's part of our contract with the prisons.
And that includes juvenile detention centers.
Yes, and
Yes.
that's why we had those judges who was that horrific story that they were taking money to send really innocent juveniles into the system. So it's really important that you tell other people that this is happening.
Go ahead.
And I don't want to divorce these two ideas.
No, they're not. Yeah.
You know, the black bodies have always been exploited for economic gain. So importing black bodies to work, I mean, that they were currency.
Yeah.
They were currency, and so, yeah.
Okay. No, thank you for that. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think it's also important to mention that there's a bed quota for immigrant detention centers too, of about 34,000 that are supposed to be filled each day.
Right.
And so I think that's important to also. So it's not only the only target isn't black people, but it's broader than that.
Okay.
Brown
No.
people too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. Thank you. All right. Yeah. What I'd like us to do now is to not just look at the problem, but appreciate the options. Okay. And the first two images there are essentially what we were talking about a few minutes ago. How do we view our children? I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but just standing in the wrong place. Okay. All right. How does that little girl feel on the left? If you were on my left, this little girl right here.
Humiliated.
Suspected.
Yeah.
Like you probably have done something wrong.
Does she look frightening to any of us?
She looks like Sasha.
She should be, right?
Yeah.
But we know the answer. She doesn't yet. But we know, right? And that the answer was that first slide we were just looking at, right? Imagine how different her day will be if that's what she was greeted with on the right instead. Who are my teachers in the room? Do you think kids entering a school with a smile, although it looks pretty suspect. It's a smile nonetheless, right? Tell me as a teacher, what is the experience impact for her versus him?
It's a world of difference.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to go there.
No, right?
You walk into the school on the left and you don't know who you can trust and you trust no one. This is
Including the teachers, right?
including the teachers,
Yeah.
including the security guards. In the school I worked at that
Bless
had metal detectors, there were kids paying off to be let in the side door. So
Really?
the metal detectors created no sense of real safety. Only the good kids went through the
Interesting. Yes. Go ahead. Yes, you. I can't see your name. Yes.
The thing that impressed me about that is that if that child had any doubts about themselves,
Just reinforced.
research like that
Yeah.
would reinforce that even if they haven't done something wrong, that they are suspect,
Mm-hmm.
and so if the child has any self-doubt, it just confirms it.
Absolutely. 5?
It normalizes.
Tell me what it does, yeah.
So we normalize incarceration, but it normalizes the system of security protocols that the child is used to.
Exactly.
He adapts to that. He knows, I gotta get out of here early, I gotta make this line, I gotta get this, and then what it is that you end up, the child's self-confidence gets knocked down into the state of saying, this is what I have to go through, it's normal for me now.
Right.
And when he sees the other school in contrast to it, it's like, wow, I may not belong here.
Thank you. Did you want to?
I've heard kids also saying, well, if they're going to treat me like a criminal, then I'll start acting like one. You're going to treat me like that.
Which is a child's logic, right? Yeah, it is. Yeah, okay. Can we go from this to that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, okay.
Actually,
Go.
I make a difference. You can't.
Yep, you can. Uh-oh, go ahead.
I can tell you, I've been on both sides of those things. When I was in middle school, that's what I dealt with. But when I moved, this right here.
This one,
I was dominant public schools, you know. But when I got to high school, I can play ball. So I went to Central. I went all the way out in the county. They bused me from the city to the county, and I dealt with that, where you can actually walk into school. And I hate to say this, but it was kids that were walking to school with packs of marijuana. You can walk in there with knives. We even had an incident where somebody brought a machete to school here. This side, you will always go through metal detectors, and like she said, people will let you in through the school door, so it really didn't work. But it's even in when he goes to the classroom, because when I was a freshman at Roosevelt, I was in a dominant freshman class, right? So in the middle of my semester, I goes to Fresno North so I can get ready to play ball. And my freshman class was senior classes.
Okay. So, I mean, what I heard in addition to a number of things is, you know, maybe when you move to the other side of the track,
I didn't know how to do it.
they gave you a little more,
Leeway.
not even leeway, a little more respect.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to have to move on. I know I only have 45 minutes and I probably used way too much so far, but go ahead.
There was, actually, I think it was in Boston, somewhere in Massachusetts, where the principal actually did that. He got to the school, and it was metal detectors.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, you have that story?
Almost. All right. I promise not to step on your presentation. Next slide. All right. The great state of Pennsylvania. Represent. Yeah. All right. Proudly? Oh, okay. You put your hand down so quickly. North Philadelphia. I'm not from this part of the world, so tell me, what does North Philadelphia mean in terms of an issue, right? Okay. Well, anyone know of Memphis Street Academy? A school in South Philadelphia in which, exactly as you began to describe, the person in charge walked into her school and said, no. Metal detectors out, bars on windows out, and I'll take my chances. Guess what? Perfect. All right, perfect outcomes. All right, violence, 0. Scores on test, up. Overall environment, perfect. All right, so it's doable. There is a way forward. It's going to take desire, challenges, and determination. And that's why we're here, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, next one. Most school districts in this country dedicate more money to security than to counselors. Someone dare explain that logically for me. It can't. You can't, right? You cannot explain that without embarrassing yourself. You wanted to try anyway? Okay, go.
I think one motivation may likely be that leaders get blamed when there's a problem.
Okay.
And so paying for security will help them not be blamed. Paying for counseling won't affect them.
My teacher's again, is she right? She is, unfortunately, right? It's fear that drives this. It's not fear for the violence, but it's fear for what's going to happen to me if I make the wrong decision. Right? Yeah, yeah. Yes?
Just speaking as not only as a parent, but as a former school board member,
Okay.
often there are grants available, state and federal level, that will fund this.
Thank
The
you.
equivalent amount of money or more to support guidance counseling programs often has been taken away, or at least is much, much less.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and I think you also are stepping on my presentation.
sorry.
Next slide.
I was talking about
I know, no. The great state of California, represent. All by yourself. If you've been connected to the great state of California, represent, so Lucy's not. Okay, all right. Exactly what you said. Governor Jerry Brown said no. State funds, at least to some degree. I saw you roll your eyes because he's not the perfect guy. I understand that. But he did make what I think a good way forward. He said, no, we are not going to fund more police in our schools. We are redirecting that to counseling. It just makes sense. All right? Again, he may end up taking a political hit. All right? But you know, it takes courage. But guess what? I don't know whose car it is outside. As I was walking around, someone has a bumper sticker on the back of their car. And I should have memorized it. I'm getting old. Should have written it down. But essentially says, without struggle, there is no progress, right? This is not going to be easy. If it's prisons, if it's the school-to-prison pipeline, if it's immigration issues, it's not going to be easy. And it's not supposed to be, because it's been around so long. There's no way that it's going to change with a little effort. Okay? We got to promise to put everything we need into this? You with me, Greg?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Who raised up zero tolerance? Someone said the exact phrase. All right. Would you talk a little bit about what you mean by that? Because I want to make sure we're on the same page.
Well, I think it varies from state to state and maybe school district to school district, but it means that there's behavior that maybe you would have been called out on in the past will get you to the prison, the principal's office, or will get you to the police station. And there's not this interactive world in the schools any longer, in the public schools any longer, where kids can, expect that if they are kids, that they're going to be fully accepted. In fact, it is a fear-based regimen, and so that's part of where the pipeline comes from. Is that you send the kid to the police or call the police. So the police are already in the school.
That's it. Yeah.
They sometimes get charged with an offense. Actually, usually they do. It sticks. Sometimes they're on probation. Sometimes they go to detention. Now they're in the system. Once you're in the system, it's so hard to get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I don't want to say impossible, but it's next to. And so that's what I mean by zero.
No, I think that's exactly it. The way that I phrase it is, we used to say kids will be kids. Now kids will be criminals. That's where we are, yes.
I think zero
tolerance means there's no compassion for why the kid is behaving the way they are.
Yeah.
So they're not looking at causes. They're just looking at the behavior as it's described by the viewer, rather than talking to the kid, because there's usually a reason. And then they get whammed, they don't get a second chance. And all of us need a second chance, or third.
Thank you, yes.
There's another aspect in St. Louis. I know a teacher. If the teacher doesn't call the police for the student's offense, then the teacher gets in trouble. So it's like catch-22. Either it's me or it's going to be you. And the teachers pick the children. They, in a sense, sacrifice the child. This teacher had to call the police on a student who had her head down. They actually called the school, because if the principal would have come in and saw the child with her head down, then the teacher would have been in trouble. So instead, now they call the police and take the child out of the classroom for simply, I don't know how many times I've gone to sleep with schools.
You're not here, right? Not just now, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, now they call the police for something like that.
All right. I haven't gotten that look. You're taking too much time, but I kind of feel it. So I'm going to ask you guys to bother me later. There is an option, though, right? Restorative justice. Does that mean anything to anyone in here? It's that opportunity to learn why and together figure out how to fix, as opposed to suspensions and expulsions. Okay. Does it happen anywhere? Has anyone experienced it? Go.
In Oregon,
Yeah.
I'm part of a board that does exactly that.
They do.
Behavior and work with the student and the faculty and even the school principal comes in to talk about how we can resolve it.
It makes sense?
Yeah.
It does make a lot of sense, doesn't it? Yeah, yeah.
Is it expensive?
No.
Much less expensive. Just
Yes.
thought I'd ask the obvious
Yeah, all right,
question.
thank you. Yes.
What,
Shirley.
I mean, I don't disagree with the idea of restorative justice at all, but what do we do with the differential definition of the same behavior by a white child in comparison to a child of color? Yeah.
First, we acknowledge it, which I think we just did, right? And not everyone is prepared to do that. Then we look at why, and maybe therein lies the restoration, right? Yeah, maybe those who are willing to make that disparity need to be in a circle, all right, to kind of understand what is leading to that. I mean, we will continue to use phrases like white supremacy and white privilege, and I honor those phrases. I don't live them, so I don't excitingly talk about them because I don't know your personal stories. So, you know, if you carry it, so be it, and work on it. But whatever the cause is, we need to acknowledge it and fix it. Okay, and it may mean that, you know, you guys have to get all of us people of color out of here and spend some time talking amongst yourselves about what the hell is wrong with y'all. Okay. Yes.
Maybe there's an option even beyond that I'll call proactivity. So take Freeman Hrabowski down at UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore campus. He's got the kids down there playing chess and winning chess tournaments all over the place. They're shown their trusted.
That's exactly right.
They can do. They're praised for that. That's better than restorative justice. It means justice doesn't have to come into play.
Thank you for that option, yeah. I am not leaving here without lifting up my home state. Who wants to join me in lifting up New York? That's it? Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. Well, for those of you who don't know, New York has this community called the Bronx. Okay. Oh, all right. Well, the Bronx that I know now is labeled one of those places, right? Where you have those people who are those type of people and deserve this type of response, right? Well, one high school in the Bronx said, we are not going to suspend anyone, okay? We will sit down with every child, regardless of what he's accused or obviously did, and we will talk.
It's a public high school?
It's a public high school, yes. Public high school in the Bronx, South Bronx, in the midst of all of the worst experiences that people might think about. And they said, no, there's got to be a better way. You think it worked? Yeah, I wouldn't be talking about it. So again, there's got to be a way forward, but it takes what? We said courage, struggle, commitment, all of the things that you all have committed to, right?
Creativity.
It does take a little creativity, yeah, absolutely.
Louis?
Yes.
It also takes love.
yes.
Because, you know, the difference between those models that you're showing us is the difference between really caring about a child and kids, or caring about something else, a job, a system. But that's a real problem for us. There's something has happened, you know, in the way we treat our children. And, you know, whether we really do, we say we care about them, but the evidence is not great.
You're right, thank you.
And they play ball with you.
Yeah, go ahead, and I might ask you to go a little, go ahead. Oh, all right, I want to just touch on this issue very quickly. It's one that I personally struggle with because I went through that high stakes testing and it worked for me, but obviously not everyone tests the way that I did, and right now it's a tool. It is a tool that is pushing kids out of school.
Yes.
All right? Have you experienced that? Yes. Most of us have, right? Where you don't go to the next grade unless for the next 3 hours you can prove to us that you learned something by filling in these number of bubbles correctly, right? That's what it is, right? I know now it doesn't make sense. All right? It's pressure. It's arbitrary. All right? And depending on who wrote the test, it's racially biased, right? But yet it's a tool that so many of our communities are using to measure the quality of our kids. Yeah. Yes.
A comment that it is used in schools, but our environment has changed so that everything is asked for as something quantifiable. There's very little qualitative that can be shown in story or description of change, etc. So I mean, I think many of us in this room that go after funding have that problem, that we have to show certain kinds of outcomes.
Measurable outcomes.
Measurable
right?
outcomes.
Is that the phrase?
Or we're not going to, we have to say we're going to do it, or we're not going to get the funds.
Yeah.
Everything.
Deliverables.
There you go. That's the other dirty word, right? Okay. But again, there's an alternative, right?
Yes.
And the alternative is a much more collaborative learning experience and measuring a child's learning not by his or her ability to fill in an A or a B, right? It's got to be something more. And I do believe that we are moving in that direction. This one I actually have hope for. I think enough communities are realizing that high-stakes testing just does not work. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to know about, was there any movement to stand with or defend the advanced teachers that were criminalized?
Does everyone know what? Louis, right? Louis talking. Louis, go ahead. Right, yes. Yeah, a number of teachers in Atlanta were arrested and are now facing charges for cheating. And they say that they were responding to the fact that if they don't provide a mechanism for these kids to pass these high-stakes tests, they end up in the prisons.
Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah. Right. And so now the teachers, well, that was the teachers' approach, was that if we don't help these students get through these high-stakes tests, these students will end up in our prisons. And now the teachers are facing incarceration because of...
They were really nailed by the judge. It was really brutal. And I think the racism in there was just absolutely profound.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Illinois, anyone? Directly or related, close enough to feel proud? Yeah? Okay, thank you. Well, Illinois has people in Illinois have done something that I think is amazing.
It's Illinois.
I know, I did have to make sure you were annoyed. When you're from New York, the S is announced. So. But it is Illinois, you're absolutely right. But what did they do? Anyone know what? Teachers, parents, and students. They boycotted. They simply said no. They're not going to take the test.
Wow.
And they stood out in front of the school, parents, teachers, and students, and said, we're not going in. All right? It's about time you understand that this is not how you measure my worth, or my student's worth, or my child's worth. And it's not going to be a tool. I'm The part that uses the S. I don't remember which city. I don't remember which city, but I can find out, okay? But they said no, all right? Many of us will talk about, as we talk about this movement against mass incarceration, to look back at the movement of the 60s as a guide. Civil disobedience is going to have to play a part in this, my friends.
Yes.
Okay? Which means we're going to have to be prepared to face the consequences of that. But it's not all going to be smooth. All right? We may end up doing some of what our heroes have done to have the advances that we need. Okay. I talk a lot and often don't say what I want to say, so I'm going to leave you with an image that for me is all that I've been trying to say. Would you turn that in? That's the end for me. Would you turn that last slide?
Oh, yeah.
Good man.
And I thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. We have time for one question.
Oh. That was planned, I promise.
No, you've got 2 minutes.
Okay.
We've had a lot of robust
That's what I
exchange, and I'm really glad for that because it's important to have people hear other voices, and that's good. I saw your hand, sir.
Because I'm bothering you later now.
Oh, okay, you figured that. Go ahead.
Someone mentioned that Ritalin, or overuse of Ritalin, and I was wondering what your thoughts are. And just so you know where I'm coming from, I mean, ADHD is a real disease. It's a genetic disease. It's got a morbidity. It's got a mortality. Runs in families, and it's got a very plausible biological mechanism. It's a disease. It's real. I would think that a lot of these kids that are going to jail are just manifesting symptoms of ADHD or other neurobehavioral problems, which their poverty sets them up also to have, regardless of their color. But maybe there's more ADHD in the schools where there's a lot of poverty. I don't know. Which is, I mean, it gets to the restorative justice. They need to be diagnosed and treated. Stimulants are overused and they're underused. They're misused. And I just wondered what your thoughts were.
No, I appreciate that, and I'll respond in a couple of ways.
You want to summarize the question? Everyone.
Oh, okay. That's your. Well, Matt does it so well, but.
Well, he does. The concept is that is ADHD, which is a real diagnosable disease with morbidity, mortality, is it more common within impoverished communities?
But really, does it underlie?
Okay.
Is it under?
Go to jail because they have ADHD.
Is it underlying this, supporting the school to prison pipeline? Really?
I guess my first response is very personal, okay? And it may not just be me, it may be my community. My experience with communities of color is we do not seek out psychiatric care at all. We're starting to realize a little more about the need to do that, but traditionally it's not who we are, okay? So therefore, if our kids, the kids that were on that first chart, have those illnesses or challenges, they're not diagnosed because we don't go there, okay? I've had many careers in my life. I don't know, that may be ADHD, right? And one of them was actually as a pharmacist, so I know about Ritalin and Adderall and all of the related drugs. And one of them was a teacher. And I taught for a very short period of time at a very elite private school in New York City called the Robert Louis Stevenson School. And it was a school that was specifically for children who could not function in the public school system because of challenges like ADHD. Maybe 200 students in the school, one child of color. Okay. The irony is one of the students, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I'll get yelled at later, was one of the sons of the Koch brothers. Yeah. And as I experienced teaching these young men and women, I every day I thought, why aren't my kids here? Why aren't kids that look like me? And it may be because the tuition was $80,000 a year. But there's such a level of ignorance and fear within communities of color for psychiatric diagnosis that we don't take advantage of what should be available to us, which are the resources for responding to that. So we put our kid in a regular public school. He's challenged by ADHD. That gets diagnosed as bad behavior. Zero tolerance results in him getting expelled or suspended. He's out on the street exhibiting those same realities, and he gets in trouble. And the result is 2.2 million people, 60% people of color. Can I take one?
We've
I
really
wanted to say something about alternative ways of looking at behavior. That there's so many things as meditation and yoga that people are doing for children who are ADHD, and it's not always about the medication.
It doesn't have to be.
And it doesn't have to be medication.
I don't want to cut our next presenters short, and I think they're going to have to set up. So make it very brief, if you would.
Yeah, I was a teacher and had a kid who was diagnosed with ADHD, a black kid, and we had worked out, for the first whatever amount of time, he would do the lesson, and then after that, he could run around. He could do what he needed to do. I was expelled. And when I came back, there was a teacher who had the class sitting perfectly in their seats, which my kids never did as an art teacher. And my guy was sitting in the hall. And I said, what are you doing in the hall? He said, every day she puts me out here. And all I wanted to say was I think a piece of this is cultural literacy on the part of the white adults. If she had any clue to this child's needs and his humanity, I think she would not treat him like a prisoner or a criminal and expel him like that.
Do you see me?
Yeah.
Do you see me now? Yeah. That haunts me from last night, from Mary Wade's, in relationship to your, let us put the people we do not understand out of our sight. That is perfect lead-in to our next presentation.